Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Saturday, January 4th, 2020. I have to get used to saying that. It's our GoldFish Report number 424. Today, we're going to be talking geopolitics with two returning guests to the GoldFish Report. We are welcoming back Benjamin Fulford of the White Dragon Society. Welcome back, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me back, Louisa.
And the Red Dragon Ambassador, back to the GoldFish Report, of course. Good to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We're going to start out today with, of course, the big news, and that is the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. And let's just start with Benjamin and see what you have to say about that.
Okay, well, I made some queries about this, and made it clear that any attempt to start World War III is not going to work, and it's going to bounce right back on the people who are trying it. And then the story the Americans told the British were furious because they hadn't been told about this and they would have been opposed to it. The excuse the Americans gave to the British is that Soleimani was going to start World War III, and he, we had to stop him because he was going to, set off nukes and try to trigger this Gog Magog end time scenario, and it was to prevent that we killed him. That's the story the Americans are giving to the British. I don't know, maybe, but these guys have lied so many times that they've lost a lot of credibility, and I think it's more likely that they killed him to try to start this World War III for the end time wacko Zionists, and it backfired in their face. So they suddenly tried to spin the story to make it look like actually, no, we're the ones trying to prevent the war. But in any case, the bottom line is that they're not going to start World War III. It's not going to happen. Sorry.
Okay, Ambassador, you may have a little more different perspective on this. Would you like to give us your opinion on what's...
No, the way I look at it is that, I have heard the testimony from, people who was a part of the security for that embassy, which is like a fortress. And basically, there's no way in hell that people could enter that, embassy without permission. You understand? So I believe that this is a false flag operation that is just created to start a third world war scenario. Now the question is that because this man is so, what's called right hand to the Ayatollah Khatami, if they will, take it as, he's a martyr and fine with it, or if they will do anything to counter it. And if they counter it, then they fall in the hands straight of the Zionists, and when we have a third world war going in our hands.
Okay,
so,
here's something you need to remember. There are people in both the Iranian government and the Israeli government who are working for the same side, trying to start World War III so they can bring on their Mahdi or Messiah or whatever. And so, like I remember all those years of Glencore Commodities saying we're going to attack Iran in a few months, and then paying off both Iranian and Israeli government officials to keep this charade going. So the important thing is to understand there are plenty of Zionists who infiltrated the Iranian government who are working with the Israelis to try to fool the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians into starting World War III. And I just keep repeating, no, it ain't going to happen. They can do this Iran-Israel thing all they want, but the rest of the world's not going to get pulled in.
Yeah, the mainstream media obviously is beating the war drum, as everybody knows, because they're part of the that same a faction, and they want the war. Just so we can see what the president had to say about this, let me just share a little screen share what the press office, the press secretary's office, put out about this. Said President Trump today said to take action was to stop a war, not start a war. President Trump has been very clear. He's offered to talk without preconditions at any time with Iran, and he continues to seek a peaceful resolution with Iran. Unfortunately, those efforts by the president have been rebuffed. Soleimani has a long history of attacking Americans, and there are at least 600 Americans that were killed with these shaped explosives, IEDs, that were used in Iraq on a regular basis, and there were many, many more Americans that were maimed, losing arms, legs, limbs, and because of his activities. He goes on to say that they were in the process of planning more attacks, and he stopped them in their tracks. But what does this have to do with the fact that President Obama had sent how many billions of dollars on a plane over to Iran? That Iran's basically was that extortion? Was that a ransom in order to keep
No, it was Iran's own money that they were receiving. They should be giving even more money with interest. This is the source, and they're doing the Zionist media claiming that Obama paid him off, or that America was gracious to give them money. They just returned money that belonged to them to start with,
Yeah, and I think they also got some Persian gold as well in exchange for this money that didn't belong to them, as you point out. It was stolen from the Iranians. They gave back some of the stolen money in exchange for gold. So, and now they want more gold, which is why they're suddenly trying to, extort from Iran again. This is all part of this. You see, at the highest level of world power, they don't accept paper or IOUs. They want things that really exist, and the Americans just don't have enough of it to pay their bills. That's why they've been trying to steal Venezuelan oil, grab Greenland, get gold from North Korea, get gold from the Persians or Iran. They're just trying everything they can, and they're trying to extort it when and steal it because they can't earn it.
Well, there was a second round of attacks. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ambassador.
That's why it's so dangerous, because it's a corner dog, and the payday is coming. They have to pay soon, and and will they be able to do it or not?
Just to clarify for our viewers, who are you referring to? They have to pay soon. Just be more specific.
No,
in case that
the people that controls United States, they have to pay soon. Yes, then they owe money, and it's time to pay. And where are they going to get the money from? Without collapsing.
You see, Louisa, the United States is a corporation that has owners.
Right.
And these owners have to deal with other equally powerful people around the world. And they have a payment, big ones, twice a year, once at the end of September and once on January 31st. Now, in the end of September, I was trying to figure out how they do it, and it ends up they stole the Japanese public pension money. And that's why the Japanese Public Pension Fund stopped announcing how they invested their money as of September 30th, because it was all stolen. This time, that's not enough, and they've been looking elsewhere for it, and so far, they haven't found it. I mean, they've kept kicking the can down the road, but I am telling everybody, don't let them kick the can down the road this time, and I've explained to them that the United States will survive and will get better, and the United States military will be just fine. It's just a bunch of oligarchs, the people who own this, Zionist media, who are going to lose control of the United States. The American people are going to be liberated. The U.S. Army will get to be the good guys again, and nothing's going to happen to them. So please, let's bankrupt these bastards once and for all.
Well, isn't that what the wars traditionally were? They were all to evade the bankruptcy, evade repaying the debts. Isn't that what the wars were all started for?
Yeah, but this time, I don't think they're going to be able to get it off, pull it off.
Ambassador?
No, I think that the strategy of having extreme patience has so far worked. I mean, look at, I've been now in Hong Kong twice, and these demonstrations, I haven't seen the demonstrations since I was there. I've just seen that they have been putting, what's called this type of metal things over the windows of the police cars. That's the upgrade they've been doing. But I didn't see anything On the other hand, I'm not moving around in the neighborhood where the demonstrations have been either, you know. But you know, it's patience when it comes to everything, all the provocations that are going on. The line has been patience, patience, and the problem is this way. You know, sooner or later, you know, they will default automatically because if you don't fall into the game and don't give them the justification, you know, like now they try to make a justification with the embassy. You understand? Try to make another Benghazi situation, and but that didn't work either. You know, and people don't. Yeah.
Yeah, they've also used you know, man-made disasters like tsunamis to try to get money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hasn't been failing. But Ambassador, I wanted to ask you. I noticed the head of the Taiwanese military died in a helicopter crash around the same time Soleimani died. And there's been a new type of SARS virus in China, and they're also attacking China with so-called pig Ebola and army worms. And the British have told me now that they've detected attacks against the United States using scalar weapons that appears to originate in China. Have you heard anything about this sort of stuff?
No, I've heard about you know, the viruses and attacks that's going on. You understand? And the heightened alert of that, but the scalar weapons I haven't heard. The thing is this way: I supposed to have an update with Master just before I was going home from Hong Kong before Christmas, and unfortunately, because of the delays from the, you know, what's called this visa office, I had to cancel it. But I'm going back to Asia again in a few days, and then I will have it. So then we will be able to talk about it.
Okay. So there was a round two. There was a second round of strikes that killed 6 more Iran militia commanders. So why would they continue to do it if you're saying they're just trying to play up a false flag?
Well, because they didn't get the effect they wanted, so they're trying harder. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel too, he's trying to use it as a get out of jail card, saying, hey, you know, the Iranians are attacking, you know, you got to vote for me. Don't put me in jail. You know, but it's not, they've lied so much that they just can't fool anybody anymore. They're only fooling half their own people even now at this point.
Personally, I think that it's some people that should be on that target list, and you know, if they would take that target list and take them out, you understand? Maybe the Iranian people would finally find peace. You understand? In their own country, but they're not so loved. These people that people imagine too. This is the problem that. People in the West think that they adore the Ayatollah, and they adore this Quds leader and things like that. We should not forget how the Republican Guard and the Quds and how they acted on the demonstrators during the Green Revolution. They were beating them down and killing them, and was very rough at them. The young people don't like that. You understand? So it's just a little fanatic faction that adores these guys that was killed either way. And I think that sometimes we in the West, we have a wrong image of how much they like their leaders.
Yeah. Well, here's a photo of an Iranian who is, on this QAnon movement. They want, to bring that movement and that kind of inspiration to cleaning up the corruption there in Iran. So there is support for it. There were people parading in the streets in Iraq, carrying flags. They were happy for this. Go ahead, Benjamin.
People do need a reminder. Ayatollah Khomeini was in France when he was exiled. He wasn't in a non-Muslim country. He was sheltered by the French, and he was put in place there because the Shah of Iran didn't want to, hand over oil anymore. And people forget that part of it. And like I say, I think that there's an element in both Iran and Israel who are part of this group. They're on the same side, pretending to be enemies to get everyone else to fight. So and yes, I think that most people have a very young population in Iran, and they have a very young population in Saudi Arabia as well. And a lot of them are sick and tired of the current leadership, which is not keeping up with the times. I notice that Saudi Arabia is trying really hard now to modernize, and I think the same will be true of Iran. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that the International Criminal Court is now taking action against Israeli and U.S.
Oh, sorry about that, Benjamin. Sorry about that. I'm just showing some photos as you're speaking of what Iran was like before the radicals took over. So to give a contrast, but go ahead and keep talking.
Yeah. So there was the International Criminal Court is going after Israeli and American war criminals. This is something that didn't happen before, and I think that the same is happening with war criminals working on the Iranian side. Like I say, they need to get people on both sides shooting each other to get everyone else to start shooting each other. And they are trying to do this. And that's something we can't forget. There's someone pulling the strings behind both Iran and Israel, and we shouldn't get in their game.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this is the deep state war that I think you keep talking about and reporting on, Benjamin, isn't that right?
Yeah, and like I say, there is a faction who really think that they need to force Islam and Christianity to a final battle in order to unify monotheism, and they just can't think in other ways.
It's a cult inside Judaism and a cult inside of Islam, both in Iran, that believes that they needs to force the Imam Mahdi to arrive. You understand? And one of the members there was this what is his name? What happened now? Ahmadinejad. You understand?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but he actually on his birth certificate, I can send it to you. It's written that he's Jewish. So around when he was 6-7 years old, supposedly he converted to Islam. You understand?
Yeah.
When he belonged to that cult also that wants this war to force the Messiah to return.
Yeah.
Benjamin, do you want to comment?
I think also President Sisi of Egypt is also Jewish.
Okay, so there was let's just break away for a minute and keep up with like what you're regularly reporting on, Benjamin, and maybe the ambassador might want to comment on this as well. This is the updated list of sealed indictments. It's now almost at 144,000. It's at 142,275. You've reported on this before, Benjamin. It is going up. And what do you think? Maybe both of you want to weigh in on this. We know that there's a long list here of sealed indictments, and I have a feeling that the first one, according to Q, of course, if you're following Q posts, QAnon is the first one, the first unsealed indictment's really going to bring down the House. Who is that going to be? Do you want to give a guess at that, Ambassador?
I don't know. I have my doubts about the QAnon movement. I don't, maybe Benjamin know more than what I know about.
Let's call a spade a spade. It's Trumpanon, okay?
Trumpanon.
Trumpanon. So let's just pretend not to pretend anything else. But having said that, I mean, the fact is that a majority of the members of Congress have been bribed to get filthy rich, in a way that's impossible to justify with their congressional or senatorial salaries. And I think there is a huge part of the middle bureaucracy of the intelligence and FBI and CIA who want to get rid of all these bribed people. And so if they do start, restoring democracy and getting, I mean, if a congressman accepts a bribe, they should go to jail, and they're not. They instead they get promoted. So it would be good if they did these arrests, but unfortunately they've been talking about it for about a year and it hasn't happened. But so I'm now in the position, I'll believe it when I see it, but I think it would be great if they actually went after the corruption. But it's just so deeply ingrained that I think the only way to do it is to bankrupt the owners of the Washington, D.C. corporation and replace it with a healthier setup. It's just so bad that, you know, it's like bankrupting it and rebooting it is going to be a lot better than trying to clean up from within at this point. What do you
Well,
think about that?
your point was it should be underscored here. You're saying it's so ingrained, and the problem is there aren't enough people waking up. Ambassador, you came out about what, 5 years ago with a war on ignorance, right? And so you were trying to wake people up, and it just seems to be going very slow, as Benjamin pointed out. And that may be why, you know, we're just seeing so much of what. Okay, you don't. I don't know what Q is. All I know is that there's a lot of coincidences, if you want to call them that. But it does look like, you know, that there are many things that there's ways to confirm that, yes, Trump is involved in this. It's a military operation. We know General Flynn called it an army of digital soldiers. So we know there's something going on. Unconventional warfare is what he referred to it as. So according to Q, you know, it's all going to come out, but, you know, the fact, and not all of it, I mean, they say like 80% of it won't, because people won't be able to handle what they're doing to children. And if they only really knew what they're doing to everybody, you know, the world, it would be a different place, Benjamin. You'd have the world you want. We'd all have the world we want if, you know, people could just handle the truth. But as you know, over the holidays, you try to have conversations with people, and, you know, you're always the black sheep, or you get alienated from conversations because you can't get people to expand their thinking. You can't get people to open their minds to the fact that, yeah, they believe there's corruption, but they really don't know how deep the corruption truly is. So the fact that people are trying, you know, we're waiting for the world to wake up. And so,
Well,
Ambassador, I'm sorry.
Louisa, you know, I think about Japan during World War II, okay? They're watching the Imperial Japanese propaganda every day, you know, and they think they're winning the war. And then the emperor comes on the radio and says, actually, we're not winning the war. And suddenly, you know, the Americans come in and they take over the television stations and the radio stations, and a whole new version of reality suddenly appears. Okay, and that's going to happen to the United States. All right. So, unfortunately for the brainwashed people who you know, who just believe in the current power structure because that's where their bread is buttered from, they're not going to change, or they're until the top changes. So it's going to have to be a takeover of the people who own the Fortune 500 companies and the big media corporations, and then using them to broadcast the truth. And only then will the Kool-Aid drinkers wake up.
Absolutely right, Benjamin. Ambassador, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I was listening in on this. What is it name? Cartel, or what is it? If I don't pronounce it right, the guy who claims that he is the signatory of this gold.
Oh, Cottrell, Michael Cottrell. Yeah. We've talked about him before, right?
Someone sent me a thing with him, and you know, it's like I said, if he would be that person, you know, he would never sit on the radio program and talk about it. You understand? Obviously, he's not who he might believe he is, who he thinks he is, but definitely he's not the one.
I have a couple things I want to say about Cottrell. One is that very early on in this game, a music journalist I knew for a long time, you know, convinced me to snort a line of cocaine, and it felt like half my head had been to the dentist. And then the very next day, Cottrell is telling everybody I'm a cocaine addict. Okay, he was definitely involved in that. And then Christopher Story, remember him, said Cottrell had him poisoned. Okay, so Cottrell is a high-level agent who's now working for himself, but no, he's not. He doesn't have the power for anything except that he was involved in the operation to take down the Soviet Union, and he is trying to, you know, make trillions for himself. But he's just a nasty agent, and nobody's going to put him in charge of, world-changing stuff. He's just not the right material.
Ambassador, did you
No, I
did you
agree.
have more comments? Yeah.
No, I agree. And also I think that just like Swiss Hindu, this is just another diversion, I don't know why they are playing these games on the innocent masses, These
So
dinars and going to happen tomorrow, it's going to happen tomorrow, it's going to happen tomorrow. People's lives are getting destroyed in the process of all these wicked lies,
Yeah, they've been doing that for more than 30 years, as far as I know. They've started with the farm programs and all sorts of things, and they're never going to give back the money because they don't have it. They just conned it out of people. But another thing, Ambassador, I'd like to ask you about, I've suddenly started hearing again talk about buying these historical bonds. This kind of all went silent for a while, but suddenly all sorts of people are saying, yeah, they're going to start buying the bonds again. And I know the people who have all those Manchu bonds, which are real, but the gold that the Manchus gave to the BIS is, they're not going to give it back, but the bonds are real. But is there any actual hope for any of these bonds, Ambassador?
Yeah, they have to be remitted in the end and will be paid off. Yes, sir. But if it gone that far with the remittance structure, I don't know. I will find out for you.
Okay.
I'll give you an answer on that tomorrow.
Okay, so Ambassador, you're saying that the people who have been holding on to these currencies, although you've come out publicly talking about a global currency reset, and it's actually more in the mainstream news now, not that I give that much credibility, but the fact that they're talking about it at all is kind of interesting, or maybe it's telling. Maybe it's telling that but what's your opinion about this? I mean, the world currencies are revaluing, as you know, as you've been talking about. So why wouldn't these currency investments be what they say that they are? Why wouldn't people be able to get a good exchange rate on a dinar or on the?
Just imagine this tremendous, what's called, drama of you have like people that died in this war, for example, Iraq. And suddenly Americans gonna be multimillionaires based on this bloody money. You understand what I mean? And the people in power.
Ambassador, I think we lost your internet.
Well, what about Zimbabwe? Okay, I mean, Zimbabwe is a small African country with, by all reports, a badly managed economy. And you think suddenly, when $1 trillion Zimbabwe bill, a trillion Zimbabwe dollar bill, suddenly going to be worth $1 trillion US dollars. It's just, the reality is not there. Sorry, this is a con job, and I've been warning about this for a long time. The Iraqi dinar, the Zimbabwe, the Vietnam dong thing, they're not gonna, suddenly become the world's currencies. And I don't like the fact that con artists use my work as part of their con,
Ambassador?
Hello?
Yeah, you're back.
So it was I was cut out by something.
Right.
Yeah. Where were I cut out?
You were talking about Iraqi dinars.
Yeah. No, like I stated, the Iraqi dinars were not supposed to leave the country, and it has left the country in big quantities. And Iraq took loans to rebuild the country from the family, and their money is disposed in different places, in Philippines, in some other countries, in China, in Hong Kong. We have over 50 trillion in HSBC in cash. So, the question is this way: how they supposed to revalue it? They want to give it like the old value, like it was before, free, like for example, like $3 US per dinar. You understand? But who's supposed to pay for that? For that, the only one who could pay for that is the family could do that, and it should be as a humanitarian thing. But it's only Americans almost that is involved in it.
Well,
so
Ambassador, Benjamin talked about the Zimbabwe note, the bearer bonds. What can you tell us about that?
No, I mean Zimbabwe have also money printed and deposited everywhere in the Vatican, and I've seen them in the Vatican and stuff like that. And it's the same thing there. They have to be put in a program to redo the country.
Mm-hmm.
It has to go to a humanitarian thing, not to enrich a new elite. You understand? And the old elite will not allow them to do it. But the bonds that, like some historical bonds that have been kept, needs to be settled in remittance and paid, especially the ones that Benjamin is talking about for Japanese things and so on.
Okay, so are we talking then? When are we going to introduce the new U.S. Treasury note? We are at we are at so many record highs in the stock market, but it's obviously a bubble. When is this correction going to happen, Ambassador?
I think so, after the election. My personal opinion.
Benjamin?
I don't think they'll be able to keep the bubble going until November of this year. I just don't see it sustainable, but we'll see. I think there's going to be a big push to have things happen before then. We shall see. It's a war, and there are two sides, right? Mm-hmm. One group wants to reboot the entire structure, especially the U.S. War machine, and another group wants to keep it going. And we'll see how it goes. But right now, it's looking like the main resistance to a complete revamping of how we run this planet is coming from Germany, Angela Merkel, and a certain faction in the Vatican that still thinks it's a war against Islam that we're dealing with.
Ambassador, do you have a comment on that?
No, I'm not surprised at all about it. I think that you have this craziness, and also it's this war on Islam is basically it's lost already because we have too many of Islamic people inside Europe, and how they're gonna deal with that, without creating another Holocaust. Yes.
Well, you got to remember, Islam is not a monolith, okay? What's been happening is they've had these agents, like al-Baghdadi, or, who's really an Israeli agent, trying to create an image of Islam that's a lot worse than the reality, okay? And the majority of Muslims are very moderate people that you would have no problem with living next door to if you knew them. And this whole idea of demonizing them and trying to, turn them into monsters, it's just not accurate. Okay, I don't like any form of monotheism and centralized control, but I've been to Islamic countries, and places like Indonesia and Malaysia are fine, and places like Saudi Arabia are now being radically reformed away from this fundamentalism. And so I think that what's going to happen is that the majority of people in both the Christian, Jewish, and the Muslim worlds are going to become more and more secular and more similar as a matter of just the trend of the times. Communications does that. When people can talk to each other, they realize their differences aren't really that big.
True, but the extremists have all hijacked in each religion. It's been hijacked by a group of extremists that are trying to drive that narrative and create that divide because they want us divided. So, that's.
The problem with the Islamic fundamentalists is that they are so small, but we have all the cameras on them, But if you look at reality, the numbers of them are so small that they are, even not even countable with. You understand what I mean? If you would go and look at like Christian fanatics and stuff like that, you would find far more danger with them and more members of them than what you would find with Islamic fundamentalists. It's just that we have the media pushing them all the time on us, and that's why we see it. You understand what I mean?
It's just a
Yeah.
divide and conquer. It's the divide and
Yeah.
conquer. But look, you guys talk about globalists and you talk about, but what about names? I mean, who's running the planet?
There's a few people running the planet. It's not only one person. You understand?
Right. Well,
The,
let's talk
it,
about
it,
who they are. You
All
talk
right.
about globalists and you talk about oligarchs, but let's have names. Who are we
Okay.
talking
All
about here?
right. I've been putting out the names.
Yeah.
You know, the Rockefeller family, they control most of the Fortune 500 companies through a bunch of foundations, and they every generation they elect the head, and then they've got a new head since David Rockefeller has passed away. Hillary Clinton is a Rockefeller, and that's why they're attacking Trump so much. Then you have the British royals; they have a lot of influence and power. Then you have the Pope, who's got a lot of power, and then you have these Italian aristocratic families descended from the Caesars. People like the Borgias and stuff are still around, and they have a lot of power. But it's like, I think that instead of thinking in terms of individuals, it's better to think of groups with similar worldviews. So, for example, the Russians use Putin as a symbol of a certain Russian worldview. And I think that by my count, they've had 7 different Putins, but the same group with the same thinking uses that as the front to say, it's not a case where, like, with the case of Kennedy, where you kill one person, you can change the whole course anymore. I think it's a system now where they have groups with a shared worldview and ideology who use certain fronts, but removing that front doesn't change the power of that group. So but you can see certain people. The Rothschilds, I found out now, they own the UN through the Lucis Trust, which is the Lucifer Trust. So there are certain families that are definitely influential and powerful. And in China, you have the old royal families, the Sungs and the Lees and stuff, and then you have people you can see like Xi Jinping, who are very powerful. It's not. There was a time under David Rockefeller when you could say he really was the closest thing to a shadow emperor. But right now, it's quite chaotic, and there's no single person or small clique in power right now. That's why the situation is so volatile.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is organize a system where we can have a loose federation that makes it impossible to wage war anymore on the planet.
Oh, Ambassador, did you drop something? Sorry.
Yeah.
And that we can work for things that we all share, like the oceans and the atmosphere and stuff.
Right.
And that's what the group I've been talking to is pushing for. I've been talking to people in the British Commonwealth. I've been talking to Russians. I've been talking to the Peace Freemasons. I've been talking to Asian, secret societies, trying to get a consensus that we all share this planet. We breathe the same air. We use the same oceans. There's certain rules that you have in any village where you don't go and murder and rape and you don't steal. And we're trying to get that in place for the planet. And the main obstacle has been these fanatical Zionists.
Okay, well, I mean, you're right. We share the planet. Aren't they breathing the same chemtrailed air that we're breathing, or are they living underground?
Well, their view is they want to kill 90% of us and enslave the rest. And that's just not compatible with the rest of us, okay?
Exactly. Well, it looks like Xi Jinping is the emperor of the world, Ambassador, wouldn't you say?
He could be a good contender, at least, for it, yeah.
Because China is, a lot of people are having issues with what's going on in Australia. That China is coming in there and really taking over, buying everything up, and might even be responsible for some of these fires. I'm not saying that as a fact. I cannot verify that, but I'm telling you this is what opinions of people have been reporting these fires. It's extremely tragic. These animals are just dying, being burned, singed to death. It's really a catastrophe down there.
The Chinese are 1/5 to the world's population, and they don't have the soft power, despite all the incredibly bad things that the U.S. has done since Bush Jr. The fact is that China doesn't have the soft power necessary to take over the world. They can only be a major player sitting at the table. They can't run the show, and they know that, and everybody else knows that. just because the U.S. is ending its days as a superpower doesn't mean we want to replace them with the Chinese. We want a multipolar world with a sort of a Arthurian round table at the top, not a single dictator.
Understood. Ambassador, your response?
No, the 555 is a committee of world leaders and different family members. So, you know, in a democratic way. So it is, like you said, like a round table. It's not one supreme being like it used to be all over everyone, you know.
Well, what do you think about what's going on in Australia? Does China have a hand in that? Is there some?
I very hard time believing that.
I'm just asking your opinion. I don't know, and I'm not assuming that or presuming it. I'm just trying to find out why it seems that there's some very unnatural things going on. There's a lot of catastrophe. There's really horrible things. People are jumping into boats to find shelter. It's so out of control. Why aren't we helping? We have cloud seeding technology patents. Why aren't we employing this technology to help bring more? It's to increase precipitation. So we have this technology. Why aren't we helping them? Why are they letting this burn out of control like this? So there must be, there's always a financial agenda behind it. That's why I'm saying follow the money.
What I don't understand is what is China want to gain on putting fire to Australia? They will lose the investments that they have there and they have to reinvest. What's the benefit of doing it?
Well, what's the benefit of anybody doing it? That's the whole idea, Benjamin.
Louisa, I looked a lot into the California fires, and there you could see a clear agenda, and there was evidence of like laser beams and beam weapons where only cars and houses were destroyed and the nature was left alone. I've been looking into the Australian fires to see signs of unnatural things, and I haven't seen that's the evidence I saw in California so far. The only thing I've seen that's been unusual is that they have unusually heavy rain in Indonesia and unusually severe drought in Australia. That could be some kind of scalar weapon originating from Antarctica, but I just don't know. But like the ambassador said, the Chinese just don't have the motive. It doesn't. I don't see how they would benefit from it. And if you look at the media reports, they're attacking the Prime Minister of Australia for not being into this whole carbon thing. So if you see who's trying to exploit the fires for political benefit, the people you see are the carbon traders.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these, they call them green terrorists. Is that what they're calling them? So that's what some people are saying. I just ask the questions. I don't have the answers, or I wouldn't be asking the questions.
Yeah, I don't, in this case, I don't have the answers in Australia. I've been looking into it, but so far I haven't seen any obvious signs like I saw in California, but I'm going to keep looking at it. Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Benjamin, because it's not over yet. It's still, there's so much. It's just in the middle of all this chaos right now, and it's hard to really make sense of it and to find, you know, how these are starting and why they're only starting along the coast. The great percentage of and concentration of these fires are along the coastlines where it's populated. So no better way to move people off a property that you want to redevelop or do something with than to create an engineered climate catastrophe. And also, you know, sadly, there's so many beautiful animals dying, being like suffering, burning to death. Like did anyone ever get burned? I mean, who wants to be burned to death, right? So it's a horrible situation. People are losing their homes, their lives and everything. And it just seems so extreme that it's unnatural.
I have been in forest fires in Canada, and there is such a thing as natural fires caused by droughts and lightning, you know.
Sure.
I'm not saying this is the case. I just don't know, right?
Right. I'm just saying it seems to be very extreme. I'm reporting on this, and it seems like it's so out of control. They've been going on for a very long time, and it doesn't seem like the help that they need has arrived. That's part of the problem.
Well,
it's
Canada
not like we can't
and
get
US
there.
have sent firefighters, but yeah, it's a good question why they're not using their weather warfare equipment to send the rain down there. I don't know.
Well, that's exactly. So Ambassador and Benjamin, we've pretty much covered the main topics we wanted to talk about. Was there anything else that you'd like to talk about?
No, for today I think it's good, and it was nice to talk to you again, Benjamin.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, Ambassador. I hope we meet in person soon. The only thing I want to say is that Okay,
Yeah.
there was a French mathematician, I listened to that apocryphal story, who predicted the day of his death. And when that day came around, he was so scared that he committed suicide. Okay? Now, all right, it's a bad example, but if we all decide that we're going to make something happen, we can make it happen. Hopefully better things. But I think that there's a very realistic chance in 2020 that we can have world peace and an end to this nightmare we're going through. I think we all need to make it happen. We can't wait for someone else to do it for us. We all have to do what we can.
Well, that's wonderful. Ambassador, your last thoughts, please.
Yeah, I'm heading back to Asia after the 15th, and then I will try to see you.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Let's hope for a slow, controlled, correction of the U.S. market, because that will have effects around the world, as everybody knows. And let's also hope and pray for peace and not war. So I really appreciate both of you joining us today and for your insights and opinions. And we will be back, do another update when we have new information. So thank you both. Benjamin, thank you so much for thank you for being with us again. And Ambassador, thank you too. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.